Julie from Pumpware, and this is Mr. Cliff Bird, and we are doing our fourth part of Ask the Principal. And Mr. Bird is actually the principal of Abram Lansing's in Cohoes, and he's been principal for over 24 years. And he's been really opening up and giving us some insight as to what goes on throughout the schools in the background, you know, things that we don't hear or see pertaining to our children who have diabetes. And we're asking questions that you have asked us to ask him. And today's question is, do you feel that the school's teachers understand the seriousness of type 1 diabetes, like the staff and you know, people walk in and say, you know, the child has type 1 diabetes. Do they understand the seriousness of type 1 diabetes?
Right off the bat, absolutely not. There aren't enough people that understand the seriousness of the disease, and an entirely sidebar conversation is the confusion between type 1 and type 2.
Correct.
You know, you walk in and tell somebody that the child has type 1 diabetes, but they're not obese. Well, of course not. You're talking about a completely different animal. And part of the problem I think we have as T1 parents and folks that are dealing with type 1 diabetes is trying to educate the entire public as to the difference between the two, because the classroom teacher initially reacts, well, then just don't let them eat candy or, you know, modify their food. This is a completely different animal, and don't expect us to know that right away. And I've learned so much more having a type 1 diabetic in my family than I did even as an administrator, and it's kind of overwhelming, as the folks that are watching this understand. So don't walk in and get angry if we as an institution or an organization don't know that much about it. Assume that this is a situation we're completely ignorant of, and then gently let us know.
Right, educate and communicate.
Yeah, there we go. That's the
That's it, the educate and communicate. What are your feelings on, and this has kind of like been something for me too, that worries me, is that like the school nurse is the one who knows how to give glucagon, about training other people, whether it's the principal or a teacher or somebody who will step up to the plate to also know how to administer glucagon. What are your feelings on that?
I certainly understand that, and as I was reading through the questions that I saw people were starting to talk to you about, I was afraid that some of your more concerned parents want everybody in the school to know. And you should never, in an organization like this, be a mile wide and an inch deep. You should always be as thin as you can be, but as deep as possible. So the simple answer to that is 3 or 4 people should know. The advantage that we have with diabetes, and I may be off with this because I'm still new, is that there's not an immediacy to making a decision about glucagon. We have time to take a finger stick and then to talk about it, which gives us time to get 1 or 2 people that know how to use glucagon to use that. I don't want the monitors in the cafeteria to have the responsibility or to even know how to use a glucagon, because I don't want them making decisions on their own. I don't want to make a decision on that.
Right.
So if my school nurse is not here, I certainly know how to use glucagon. I want the classroom teacher to know in case the nurse is distracted or there's another emergency. But I only want 3 or 4. I don't want a whole list of 20 people being able to use.
And is there anything written saying, well, we can't train, you know, outside a nurse how to give glucagon?
I don't believe so. Because we just have to make sure that our kids are kept safe.
Right.
So one of the questions could be, I believe a teacher could say they're uncomfortable doing that, and then as the administrator, you go on and find somebody else
that's
who's
interested,
going to be
would
there
help.
that says, sure, I'll
Absolutely.
take the orange and practice.
Do you feel that school nurses and teachers need additional training on how to recognize the signs of type 1 diabetes, recognizing the low, and helping a student? Is once a year, like typically, like we were speaking prior, both of us do training with the teachers and the nurse prior to our child going in. But do you think more training needs to be given to teachers? Is that enough?
I think it needs to be a continual conversation, and I think it's because you and I were just chatting. What were the numbers today?
Right.
I mean, diabetes is also fun and entertaining because it's different every day.
Right.
And I don't think classroom teachers realize that. They expect the kids to come in the same way every day. So part of the is not necessarily training as much as conversations. And I've been able to find that my nurse and my classroom teacher of the diabetic kids have these conversations. Well, and it's kind of funny, if I can say that, to have two adults in the hall, hey, how are Bob's numbers today? You know, anybody else go by is like, what are they talking about?
Right, are you high?
Yeah, I know.
You know,
How are
that's
things
what
going?
always get us, you know.
So I think more, I mean, we were saying communicate here, but I think more conversation is as important as the training. But the other piece that you mentioned is students change every year.
Right.
Now, I do have one teacher that's going to loop, so she's got one of my type 1 students she'll have for 2 years, and we're very comfortable knowing. The other thing to that is we have tried now in our building that once we have a teacher that's had experience with a student with type 1, if I can put my next type 1 in there,
Right.
we're just increasing that teacher's level of
awareness.
knowledge and awareness, and the comfort level is there too. Oh, she didn't, you know, my first one didn't die, so I can probably take the next one and we'll be fine with that too.
Right. And I think too, what we found too is there does become a comfort level, and when things are running really smooth, sometimes people do forget.
Mhm.
And that, you know, because we've now, when you get into the high school level, you're traveling from classroom to classroom to classroom to
Is it-
classroom. Is a huge
Completely
difference from
different.
just dealing in the elementary level where you're dealing with one teacher. And what I found is, you know, I will get a call from a teacher saying, you know, she's leaving the room, she's constantly going to the bathroom, you know, I just want you to be aware of this. And it's re-educating that teacher to, that means she probably has a high blood sugar, she's going, and I'm glad you're letting me know. Again, a communication with that teacher, thank you for letting me know what's going on, because now we know that maybe her blood sugars are way too high, and we need to address that as an issue too.
But you hold, and some of the folks watching this have kids at all different levels. One of the advantages that we have is the students get older, they can take on more of their responsibility,
Absolutely.
which is part of what we're training them. My 8-year-old does almost everything on her own now, but reports to us.
Right.
So that's a whole difference. But the other piece to that is the animal, or the kid that's in high school, aren't as trustworthy as we'd like them to be, so that's
Yes.
where the communication also needs
Absolutely.
to come in. So it's conversation and communication with the folks that are there.
Well, thank you very much for doing our series
You're
with
welcome.
us. And do you have any problem if a parent with diabetes wanted to contact you?
Not at all.
Okay, and we will put
Put your-
Mr. Bird's information up there. If you have questions, he'll be happy to also answer them. And I found that myself in talking with other principals and people that are working with children who have diabetes. You know, getting their information out there really helps our children in schools. This is Julie at Pumpware.